So we'll start with a short demonstration. Let's see what typically we'll be doing in this class. So as I said that although we'll be working with open source software in this course, in the beginning, I mean, you need to focus on how to do things rather than how to install software. So we have generated a virtual machine for this course that's available on this link. These slides will always be uploaded on Moodle, so you can go and check these links and so on. So username, passwords given. This file is large. If you uncompress it, it becomes around 10 gigabytes. So let's jump right into it. So what you need for running this is a software called VirtualBox. Which looks like this. That's the only software. You can install that in Windows or Linux or in fact any OS that you want. And then you will download this file that I mentioned, the IT Mandi Cloud link. Once you do that, there'll be a file there. You double click it. You will see that a virtual machine comes up here. I have many virtual machines for different reasons. So if you double click this one, it will take some time and a virtual machine will open. So virtual machine is basically like a whole operating system, but in a file. Earlier people used to have dual boot systems. So if you want Windows and Linux on the same machine, you would typically install, let's say, Windows first, and then you will install Linux. But to go from Windows to Linux, you have to restart the machine. Nowadays, we don't do that. It's very rare. So what we do is we have virtual machines where for example, I give you a complete OS in a 10 gigabyte file. You simply need to download the file and run it in VirtualBox, and for all practical purposes, it will run like an independent computer. So that's what, sorry, it's here. The password is ME522. That's the course code. Right, so we'll resume our discussion. So let me demonstrate typically what you will do in this course. So first what we'll do is we'll download some lecture material from IT Mandi Cloud. So let's do that. So I'll open Firefox. The internet's not working. think I already downloaded something, so I'll restore that. Okay, so I don't need to do that because I already had that on my machine. So this is basically lecture 1 material available on IT Mandi Cloud. So what we'll do now is we will simply run this and then see what typically we'll be doing in this course. So we are using bash commands, and as I said, next lecture we'll be learning about that. It's quite convenient to navigate your way. So as I said, please don't talk in the class. So it's quite comfortable to navigate things on bash very quickly. So if I do an ls-l, that shows me all the contents of the folder that we have in lecture 1. These are the files. Can you read the things clearly on the thing? Is it out of focus? Seems to be slightly out of focus. We'll make sure next time it is in focus. Right? So what we'll do now is we will run one of these. So you can see that there's a file called makefile. So let me open the contents of that. So this is what a typical makefile file looks like. That's the build system we talked about in the last lecture. So what you can see is it has some targets here, like Jacobi 2d.exe, solution.txt, plots. So let's say I want to generate plots. So I go to this makefile, there's a target called plots. So let me go out of this file and I'll simply type make plots. And then this starts doing some stuff. I don't even know what it is doing, but since I saw the target called plots, so I will try to do that. Now it says Python not available. So we'll also learn about virtual machines in this course. So let me enable. I've created a virtual machine on the desktop. I'll tell you what it means and how you create and install things in that. It's basically if you want to install some stuff, some libraries in Python and so on, you don't need to do it in the base machine that you have, because sometimes we try to install a newer version of a library and that breaks something that was working earlier in a previous software. So what you do is you create these virtual environments where you can install stuff, and when you're done with it, you can simply delete the environment, or you can have multiple environments with different versions of libraries and so on. In fact, if I want to share a set of libraries that I'm working with in a virtual environment, I can create a file out of those and share the file with you, and you can use that file to install or recreate the virtual environment. So virtual machine and then virtual environment and all these things are quite useful nowadays. Okay, so we'll talk about these and learn about that as well. So in this, I've created a course virtual environment. So let's go into it, and then I'll activate it. So this activates the virtual environment. Now I can go to the lecture, and if I say make plots now, hopefully this will generate. And as you saw that this time it did less work. Earlier it did a lot of things, but this time it only plotted things. So that's the one good thing about makefile, is that if there's a sequence of stuff to do, for example, in this case, it had to compile some Fortran codes. That was step 1. The second step was to run the executable, the exe file. And then the third step was that once it has generated some data in a text file as a result of running the software, it used that data to generate plots in Python and exported that into a PNG file, which is an image file, like a JPEG file. So ultimately now what we have is we have these two PNG files called pcolor and contour. So we can open that in Firefox. I can say Firefox star.png. That will open all the PNG files. And you can see that the two tabs show the two images. So it was very convenient for me to simply run this. Otherwise, I would have to learn what commands to type to do step 1, step 2, and so on. So with Makefile, you can do things in a pipeline kind of a format, and you can get the final result out of it. So it's very useful if you are repetitively doing things, or if you are telling someone to do that as well. Okay, we'll talk more about this in the future. So this is typically a short demo of what I wanted to show you in this class. Now, what exactly it did in this case is to solve a Laplace's equation. So Laplace's equation is Laplacian of phi equal to 0. That's typically solved in engineering for solving, let's say, heat equation and so on. It generates a grid. So in this case, you saw some contours, right? So that was the contour of temperature. So basically isotherms in this case. So what it does is it has some known boundary conditions on the boundaries here, and it calculates the solution, that is the temperature here, which is basically the solution to the Laplace's equation. So to solve Laplace's equation, it discretizes the equation. Again, you don't need to understand those ideas right now. But basically what it does is it uses an iterative method. So it has some, you guess some initial temperature at all the points from 1 to 16. So let's say 0 degrees centigrade. And then it uses an iterative algorithm, basically in a loop, to calculate the values at different iterations. So basically you guess something, and eventually you will converge to a temperature field which looks very much like the actual solution to the Laplace's equation. Okay, so this is very much a computational algorithm that typically scientific computing exercises involve. That's just one example out of many that we'll be doing in this course. And since there's an algorithm associated, we can explore parallelizing the algorithm. In this case, we are using something called Jacobi method. So Jacobi method is, if you look at the last equation here at the bottom, so what it does is U is the temperature, and these indices are basically, let's say this is I comma j. Let's say 11 number is I comma j. So 12 is I plus 1 comma j along the x-axis, 10 is I minus 1 comma j, 7 is I comma j minus 1, and 15 is I comma j plus 1. So basically it calculates the temperature at I comma j at the k plus 1th iteration as an average of the temperatures around it at the previous iteration. And it keeps doing that again and again in a loop until it converges to a solution. And it does it for all the points that are marked here inside the grid. Okay, so that's what we just solved. But it also solved things in a parallelized fashion. So if you look at these messages here, it said using only one thread, and then it converged in 15,046 iterations. Iterations is basically the number of times it had to run the loop, and the time elapsed time is the time the computer took. That was 3.767 seconds. Then it ran the same problem with OpenMP using two threads. So now parallelized fashion. It ran the same number of iterations. So the work was still the same. It had to run the same number of iterations, but the time taken was less, 2.352. It was not exactly half, but it was definitely lesser than 3.7 seconds. So what we saw was that the work required definitely reduced by parallelizing the problem. So this is typically what we do in scaling analysis that we'll be learning in this course, that you do an experimentation. If you try it with one thread is basically amount of work. You try breaking the work into 2 threads, 4 threads, 8 threads, and so on. And then you see how the elapsed time or how efficient the solution becomes in terms of, I shouldn't say efficient, but how quickly it is able to run in terms of elapsed time. So ultimately you want to solve things quickly. Now we've been talking about parallelizing things and so on, but also remember that although there has been a lot of development in terms of the supercomputing hardware, as you can see in the bottom graph here, it's basically a semi-log graph. So this turns into an exponential increase in computing power, but there has also been a lot of progress in the algorithms. So even if you had a serial machine, you could still see an exponential increase in the speed of execution because of the improvement in algorithms. But recently the algorithmic improvement is happening for algorithms written for parallelized execution, not for serial execution. So these things are working together, and we are getting super exponential increases, if I could say that, in terms of the algorithms. And that is the reason, with time you're seeing that the technology is transforming much beyond what we can expect. So machine learning has taken up in the last few years, but the amount of progress that has happened is immense. Now with Gen AI, it can literally generate voices, it can generate text, of course, generate images, it can generate songs. Has anybody heard the rap wars between models? So do Google Claude versus GPT rap wars. So it generates these rap songs, converts that into audio, and in the end you get an audio file, and that sounds like somebody actually singing the song. So that's how exponentially progress is happening, both in terms of hardware. NVIDIA is working a lot, and the software technology as well, that OpenAI and Google and everybody else is working on that as well. So yes, so before we close this session, this is the last slide on what you can expect from this course. So on the left we have how you can become more effective in terms of computing. On the right we have the technologies that you'll learn. So we'll start with introduction. We're almost done with that. We'll talk about some Linux and Bash commands, and also about how computer stores numbers and so on. We'll spend a lecture on version control using Git. Then we'll spend quite a few lectures on Python, because we'll want to learn how to do scientific computing in Python. And through this exercise, we'll be writing codes. We'll be also learning how to use Git while doing a computing development, and learn how to prototype algorithms in Python and do code profiling. Code profiling is very important. You need to know what parts of code are taking what amount of time, because sometimes we spend a lot of time parallelizing a module, but then in the end we realize that module was only taking 1 minute out of the 100 minutes taken. So if you can reduce that 1 minute to half, you still have 99 minutes remaining. So one has to profile the code first and understand where is the bottleneck, or where I can contribute much more. We'll talk about HPC, how to use HPC, particularly using both the in-house HPC that we have and Param Himalaya. We learn about Fortran. We'll spend some lectures on Fortran. Learn about modules in Fortran, functions, subroutines, and wrappers, how to write wrappers with Fortran. And we'll spend a lecture on makefile build systems. Then we'll jump into, once we know how to do things effectively, we'll jump into technology. So we learn about parallelization in general, how computer architecture works, what parallelization means, and what levels of parallelizations can you do. Then we'll have 3 levels of discussions. One is OpenMP, that's shared memory parallelism on a CPU. Then we'll talk about MPI, which is distributed memory parallelism. And then finally cloud computing, finally GPU, where this is a new topic this year, where we'll learn how to use GPUs for parallelization. And GPU is particularly interesting because NVIDIA is, shares are skyrocketing. So NVIDIA GPU technology in general is getting very popular. So the hardware is getting cheaper and you are getting more access to that. Especially the gamers would know that. So we'll also learn how to exploit that technology for our scientific computing exercises. Then we'll spend a lecture on cloud computing, learning AWS and Google Cloud Platform, just 2 lectures on ML and Gen AI, and then finally summarize the course. So this is a total 42-hour plan that we have. And for references, a lot of stuff in this course has been taken from a similar course that was taught long ago at University of Washington by Randy Levesque. He's actually a mathematician who still works in computational fluid dynamics. But things have evolved. So we took the motivation from this course, but slowly technology is evolving, so we're adding more stuff to it. Okay, so this is the end of lecture number 2. Tomorrow we have